All right.
I can never see that.
Guys, thank you for joining us here this evening. You can probably see we've got our special guest online already behind us here. Let me first introduce him. You know me already, so you don't need much of an intro. This is Ori Braun. Ori is our rep for Santee Drysuits. Some of you have met some of the other guys as well. Ori knows that we're having a general session on Drysuits tonight, but I always like to get one of the manufacturers at least to come in and share a little bit about some of their specific things of their suits and that kind of stuff. It's always nice to hear it from somebody else other than, you know, the Brad or the Chris that you deal with every day. But feel free to ask Ori any questions about Drysuits that you wish, whether it's just types of Drysuit diving, types of Drysuits. All the manufacturers are pretty well versed in the industry, so can probably answer any of the general questions. Our roadmap tonight is really just to talk. It's really more of a discussion-based evening as opposed to, oh, look, here's my PowerPoint presentation. Let me show you all this. As you can see, I have a number of different Drysuits hung up here between myself and Chris. There may be some things to go and grab downstairs if people have specific questions about some things. But it's really to spend an hour talking about Drysuit yays and nays. You know, A is a Drysuit for me, and I'm happy to sort of share what I think a Drysuit is good for people. It's not necessarily the right purchase for everybody. And we'll also talk about kinds of Drysuits and maybe the options that you choose, because again, those are not universally accepted. Or you tell you, hey, listen, they like wearing a certain type of boot down there in cave country. It's a little bit thinner and all that kind of stuff. I didn't like those boots. I do ice diving and I'm standing on the ice. I wanted thick, warm, woolly boots, but they don't have to deal with some of that stuff down where they are. So even then, features as simple as what type of boot you want to put on your Drysuit. I'll usually have a fairly lengthy discussion, usually an hour to an hour and a half with somebody before we even start taking a measurement of any kind. What is it that you're going to do? What would you like? What features would be important to you? Et cetera, sort of walk people through an education process. We have all of it here. We sell all of it here. It's just what's right for Shireen may not be what's right for Adrian, may be very different than what Phil wants. So it's not like, hey, I'm just trying to sell a Drysuit. Anybody, you know, like, it's not throw it against the wall and let's see what sticks. It's like, let's figure out what's really right for you. So that's what we're going to be sort of talking through tonight. Give you guys the chance to ask questions about that. Or Ori while he's here. Come on in, grab a seat up here. We just getting ourselves underway. No worries. And the intro. I'm sorry, I'm Brad.
Yeah, Ryan, we've met.
Ryan, this is Ori up here on the screen. He's from Santee, so we're just sort of going over what we're going to chat about tonight. So yeah, so feel free. It's very interactive. Like I said, there's no PowerPoint. It's really going to be a sort of an interactive type of evening. And we'll just keep you here for about an hour, hopefully give you the information you want. Of course, if you are interested in Drysuits and Drysuit diving courses, and we can help you with that. That wouldn't be the subject necessarily tonight, so if you have a specific question about something, but we're not going to get into the nitty-gritty of that part tonight. Really more just the styles and what might be right for you, and Drysuit is the right purchase for me based on what I think. With that, hey Ori.
Yeah.
Would you like to share start sharing a little bit? I'm gonna talk about the different types of suits in a few minutes here. You might want to just give a little intro on you. We're going to talk about basically there are say 3 or 4 different types of suits, and then I'll turn it over. There's the big neoprene suits. You know, those are usually commercial diving suits. Big, thick. Bear D6 would be a good example. I'm not even sure that these guys make ones like that at Santee. Well, pretty sure they don't. There's only a couple people that make those. I think Scuba Pro has one, Bear has one, there might be a few others. But if you think about that, that's like wearing a big pillow, you know? It's big, it's from not so much from the comfort. You're gonna be like that initially. It's big, it's bulky, it's not really flexible, but it's warm because it's thick. and then you're gonna wear your thermals under that. And so for some of these commercial guys that are underwater for 3-4 hours, surface supplied air, and they're on a job, they need something that's gonna keep them warm. They're not really worried so much about physical dexterity with their body, because they're probably planted on the bottom like this, doing stuff here. Right, so they just want to be warm. So there's that kind of suit. And very rarely do you see somebody in a recreational circle diving one of those, unless they're a commercial diver and that's the dry suit they have, and you can't afford to buy another one, they'll make it work. But if you think about sort of wetsuits and dry suits, what would one of the negatives of that be? A lot of weight you've got to put on to keep you. So now, not only do you have all this 6-7 mil neoprene suit, but all the air that's inside of that, you know, trapped by your thermals, they're wearing 30, 40, 45 pounds of weight, which is a lot for an average person. So that's the thick one. There are a couple of manufacturers that then make what's called a crushed neoprene suit. And that's taking a 6 mil suit, mechanically crushing it down to 2 mils, mostly getting the air bubbles out of that. Okay. Their XCD2 is a good example of that. It's going to have a little bit of extra thermal warmth in it just because it's neoprene, but it's going to have less buoyancy than that big thick full neoprene suit. And then there are a couple different types of trilaminate suits. This is particularly the area's specialty Santee has. So I'll turn it over to Ori here in a minute. But you can get all sorts of different types of materials, bilaminate or trilaminate. What do we mean by that? Well, it's layers of material, okay? And one of those will usually be some sort of butyl rubber, like a waterproof layer. And then oftentimes either a fabric or a cordura or some other kind of layer front and back that just adds to comfort, durability, etc. of that suit. They're all made very differently. You ask, oh, which one is the best one? It's kind of it's one of those, it depends.
I bet you Ori says it's sent.
Well, yes, I would hope so. Otherwise, I haven't paid them enough. Which one is the best one? Again, it does depend. But in the, you know, in the trilam or bilam, like for example, they have an Emotion suit, which is a very light laminate type material, or you can get an Elite or an Enduro, which is a very heavy duty laminate material. Okay, which one is right? Well, it really depends on your application, what you're looking to use it for and stuff. Maybe or you can talk a little bit about some of the different materials. Can I turn that over to you to chat about some of the materials and a few of the Santee suits?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it goes into a little bit of detail. So, as Brad mentioned, I'm Ori down here in Florida, High Springs, obviously. So our water temperature is extremely cold down here year round. It's 72 degrees, never changes. But I'm an avid cave diver down here. So, you know, even with the temperatures of the suits and the different style of suits out there, we obviously look for a lot of durability in them. For the long range dives that we're doing, even on the cave side, but we're also looking at longevity in the water. So we're easily in the water anywhere from 3 to 9 hours on any given dive. And even in 72-degree water, you do start getting cold after the first couple of hours, especially on longer decos. So similar to what you guys are dealing with up there, obviously the conditions are a lot more extreme for the cold water portion. Because you guys are cold immediately when you get into the water, but the dives are generally a little bit shorter because of that same element to a degree, especially in wetsuits. And we all start with wetsuits, right? We go from wetsuits to semi-dry suits to thicker neoprene suits if we're using them, and then we eventually make the leap into dry suits. And I did the same thing when I was coming up through my diving career. Is you start with a wetsuit or a semi-dry suit, which is still a wetsuit. And then you start moving into the dry suits eventually. And usually you don't go backwards. Usually you don't go back to the wetsuits hardly ever if you can try to avoid it. So, but we look for all these, especially with the different materials. And I'm one of the few down here, especially at Santee and Halcyon in North America, that enjoys cold water diving. So just like you guys, I travel up north, and you guys live up there, obviously, but I travel up north quite a bit. Ice diving and extreme colds became a big passion of mine about 6 years ago. So I've gone as far as Alaska, doing up at Kodiak Island, doing cold water deep wreck dives out that way as well, and then all through Canada. So for some reason, I have a draw to the cold. So I enjoy coming up and diving with you guys whenever I get a chance. usually during the harshest months too. So we're talking January, February when I start making those treks. Because what makes it even better than diving in cold water, but also doing it during the winter. So it's a lot more enjoyable for me. So, but so we look at dry suits, right? So dry suits themselves have a couple of different elements, as Brad was mentioning, for the different materials and thicknesses that they're made out of. And Santee has a range of these same different materials that you can get. Ultimately, for the materials itself, it comes down to the nylon, the polyester, the tri-laminates. And what these do is they add structure to the suit. So it all depends on what you're utilizing them for. There's recreational dry suit divers, there's sport dry suit divers, there's recreational technical dry suit divers, and then there's the full-on technical divers. But then there's also the commercial aspect of diving. And even as instructors, we look at the commercial aspect in that regard. So we want a suit that is extremely durable and will have a longevity to it. But usually with the longevity of the material, it's normally less flexible because now the material is thicker. So we look at those elements whenever we're talking to different customers and clients about what suit to go with when it comes down to it. And then we have lighter weight material suits that have a lot of flexibility to them. They're rugged, don't get me wrong, but obviously they can't withstand force like the heavy duty material can. So there's a lot of there's actually 4 basic questions we usually start coming down when it comes to dry suits themselves. And even when we're talking about Santee or DUI or even Fourth Element or a lot of the other manufacturers that are out there, is what are you looking for in a suit when you're going and doing your dives? Do you want flexibility? Do you want it to be rugged? Do you want it to be a lightweight dry suit or a heavy dry suit? Do you want it to dry fast in between dives? Or if you do get a flood in the suit, to where you can dry it out very quickly and do the next day of diving? Or does the dry suit, require 2, 3, 4 days to dry out completely before you can start using it again? And the crushed neoprenes fall into that category where they take a long while before they actually dry. Whereas a laminate or a polyester suit will dry within a couple of hours if it gets wet on the inside. So we start balancing out all those elements. So when we start putting those particular items on a scale for flexibility, durability, lightweight, or even fast drying, then we start zeroing in on what the top 3 suits would best be suited for you on those realms are. If you are a photographer and you only ever care about flexibility, be able to move around, then that puts one suit at the top of the list very easily for Santee side. If you're more of the going out, you want a durable suit, you want it strong, you want to feel like you have something on, then it's a heavy duty suit, and there's only one suit that goes to the top of that chain. But now when you start balancing out heavy duty to flexible, well, now we start talking about a couple other suits along the way. So it really comes down to what you guys want to start doing. And these are the conversations and the questions that Brad mentioned before that basically takes in an interview process to figure out the right suit for what you're starting with. And even starting out for your new suit or your first suit, you may not know, right? So I can tell you that when I started with my dry suit career, I didn't know which suit to go with. I took the recommendation from the shop that I was going through, and I worked with that suit for a couple of years, and then found out what I really wanted out of a dry suit as I dove it more and more and more, and then started looking at the other options that peered up throughout the different manufacturing processes. So with a lot of the manufacturers, there's a range of dry suits you can go with, and this is really what it comes down to, is what you guys feel is going to be the best suitable suit for what you're doing. There could be some of you that are just ice divers that are in the room, or ones that are cave divers that want to come down and do cave diving. There could also be the ones that just go out and have fun and dive, 10, 15 times a year. So you may not need to invest in a heavy duty suit if you're only going to use it a couple times a year. A lighter weight suit may be the option that isn't as hard on the pocketbooks when it's all said and done. And those options are always available. So we'll talk more as we go through this, but that's kind of an idea of what we're looking at whenever we're talking about dry suits. And this is why, it's not to say that Santee's the best dry suit out there by any means. They have, a lot of great suits, and they're one of the top entities when it comes to dry suit manufacturers in the world right now, along with a couple of others. And they have a wide range of suits for sure. But, there could be another suit that's out there that's a specific color that you want that Santee doesn't offer, and color may be your driving force. So you may choose that brand just because of the color of suits that are available. Having said that, Santee doesn't have any, bright purple suits. So sorry to bust some of you guys' chops on that one, but we don't have a lot of those. So, colors on other manufacturers, they may have for sure to make it matchy with the rest of your stuff.
But you could get a bright purple halcyon wing though, if you wanted.
You can for sure.
You
There's
can get a bright purple halcyon wing if you want. So
yeah, there you go. So there's lots of things along the way, and if you guys got questions as we go through this, I'm happy to answer them. For me, Santee does have an elite suit, an elite plus suit that's at the top of the tier. And it is their latest, greatest model that's out, which also means it's their most expensive because they've learned through their process of building suits of what is the best kind of cut of suit and the flexible options and then the material it needs to be made out of to work for a majority of divers. And, a lot of us that do exploration or cave or wreck or ice, we all look at those and they take into all those account to be able to make a top range suit that covers a wide spectrum. But of course, it's at the top of the tier at that point. But even their bottom tier suits are very good quality suits. And a lot of manufacturers are that way, but they may not have the most flexibility, or they may not be the most durable, or they're an extremely thick layered suit, which means you lose a lot of the momentum that you would have in others. So it comes down to just really the options and the available choices when we start looking at it. So this presentation isn't to sway you guys to Santee by any means. Obviously, we dive Santee. Brad does as well. We enjoy it for the quality that's made out of the suits, and we can talk more about that as well if questions come up. But it's really an interview with you guys to figure out what suit what options you're looking at in a suit when it's all said and done. And Brad will talk more about that as we continue to go on. So, does anybody have any questions over any of that, or?
Does anybody have any questions at the moment? No. Okay. I got a couple that I'll just start us up. Maybe give us 2 or 3 of the things that you think are awesome about Santee suits. I got a few different suits hanging up here, so everybody can have a look. It's an unbiased presentation,
Sure.
All said and done. But since you're here, what are a couple of the things that you really love about Santee suits, say, versus some of the other ones, and Fourth Element and Bear and stuff? What are some of the things that you love about the Santee suits? I mean, I know your philosophy is the suit should be ready to dive, so it comes with everything. And not everybody does that. That would be one thing I'd love for you to touch on from the manufacturer's side. But maybe add another thing or two in there that you really like in terms of the way you guys approach delivering a dry suit to a customer.
Yeah, for sure. So we've been working with Santee for about 10 years now. So we're the North American distributor for Santee. So we sell a ton of suits all through North America for all these ranges. And when we partnered with Santee to be able to do the distributorship, they wanted to build a suit that also met some specifications that we had. And right out of the gate, when it comes to our dry suits, we wanted to deliver a dry suit that was completely finished. We didn't want to have a ton of upgrade options or upgradable options. To get a base model suit, it's like getting a base model car that doesn't have power windows in it, right? So, who doesn't want power windows this day and age, or heating on the back or front windows, or heated seats? So we looked at all these options even for dry suits, and we started going through these different scenarios. So we actually, through a lot of partnership, we convinced Santee that, let's build end suits for a lot of customers and not have a lot of upgrade options on them, meaning they're already on the suits. So even for Santee suits, they come with both pockets on them, and they're the latest, greatest pockets that have all the features for wet notes, underwater diver notebooks, or bungees on the inside. They also come with knee pads already. Everybody needs knee pads on a dry suit, so we don't charge additionally to put knee pads on. They already come with it for Kevlar. The wrist rings on all the suits, replaceable wrist rings, are also included on all the Santee suits. There's no upcharge for that. The only time we change the price of that is if you're choosing an oddball style of ring system to go into the suit that Santee doesn't offer, that isn't the system that Santee promotes for a lot of their suits. So when we looked at all these elements, we basically deliver an end-all suit to the customers that have everything on it. There's actually only 2 choices you really have to make on a dry suit that affects the price. And one of them is if you want a quick neck ring, so a neck seal that's replaceable with a ring system in it. So that becomes an upgrade when it comes to the dry suit. And then the other upgrade comes down to the boots. So there's actually 3 styles of boots that are out there. Flex soles, as Brad mentioned, is what we use down here in Florida because we like to have the articulation of the ankle. but they're only a 3 mm neoprene boot that has a heavy duty sole on the bottom of it. So it works great for us. And even in cold water, it works as well. But as Brad mentioned, he likes the heavy duty boots, and those are the 6 mm neoprenes. So with those, they're a little bit heavier duty boot. It has a solid rubber coating on the outside, so it works great for the cold water for long durations. And then standing on that frozen water stuff that you guys are always on. So, so your feet stay relatively warm, but they do add a buoyancy or a buoyancy effect to the boots because they get a little bit more buoyant that way, which can get combated by the right fin, which is another part. But so the only other upgrade then is if you go with neoprene socks. So you get to choose all three of those options. We're not charging individually for those or upgrading of those. But the neoprene socks, if you choose to go with Santee's rock boots, for instance, to go with the socks, then they charge you for the rock boots is what happens. So that's an upcharge when it comes down to it. But you can choose to use their rock boots, or you can choose a different brand of rock boots, or even tennis shoes, which some people do as well. Or they put a wetsuit booty over the top of them and run them that way the same way. So this is why it's a flexible option when it comes to that. But the benefits of Santee itself that I like seeing is one, how they're constructed, and this is a big part that you'll see in a lot of different dry suits, is for instance, the inside of Santee's suits are all taped together, and all suits are, but they use a rubber seam tape and they glue it into place. It's not heat treated and not to put together with heat welding or any heat transfer properties. So it's actually a seam rubberized tape. And it may not seem like a big thing for, obviously, if you're not used to dry suits, but donning and doffing a suit that has the seam tape on the inside and it's a rubberized tape allows that suit to slide on and off really, really easy. Because it's a smooth rubberized surface, it actually makes it very easy to get on and off. The other style of suits that have a heat tape or a rough tape on the inside, or even aqua seal all through the inside holding it together, that becomes very grabby when you're trying to take the suit on and off, and it becomes a battle when you're trying to get it in place. So it doesn't allow the suit to breathe and stretch as well as it needs to, even when you're trying to use it in the water. So Santee uses a rubberized tape that's glued in, and it's very easy to use and also repair if we ever have to as well. The other big factor that Santee goes in and does is they don't have a lot of multiple material suits, meaning tri-laminates, to where they stack material on top of one another, or they come in and they do what's called an overlay. The overlay is having an additional panel sewn onto the top of the suit to bring in color. Everything that they do actually comes with the color in mind. So when you see an orange or a red or a green Santee suit, they actually have that specific color in that specific style of fabric, and that's what they use to actually build the suits. So they're not building a base black model suit that's all completely done and then just sewing an additional fabric on top of it to bring out the flare and the color. So for them, it's actually a construction thing that makes it a lot more durable that way, to where they don't have those extra overlays on top to bring in those different elements. So with the Santee suits, those are the key things that I really like about it. And the sewing of Santee, when they actually sew the suit together, all the seams are sewed to the inside of the suit. So when you're looking at the outside of the suit, for instance, you're actually looking at just like a t-shirt or a jacket. You don't necessarily see all the seams because it's all tapered to the inside with cross stitching. So what that means is they also don't have to tape the outside of the suit. So that tape doesn't peel off or rub off or eventually come off just from baking in the sun or getting heat exposure. So everything is truly quality based inside the suit itself, which is super cool because it's a look that Santee has a high pride in for sure. There's a few other manufacturers that do the same, but how they put the suits together is really what stands them apart. DUI, I'll tell you all day long that DUI is a very good constructed suit as well. And being a USA made brand, I'd stand behind them all day long when it comes to a dry suit. If people were really passionate about USA made stuff, as we all are. But at the same time, the inside of their suits are aqua sealed together. And that aqua seal is a bugger when we have to do repairs or try to fix. And then also the donning and doffing, it becomes a big bugger at the end of the day because it's so grabby of a material. Bear does similar process and then some heat transfer as well. So that tape just, especially in Florida, just doesn't hold up as well as it needs to because of the heat and the moisture that we have down here. So the quality is just a little different when we look at these different manufacturers when it comes down to it. But They all have pluses and minuses. Don't get me wrong. Santee does as well. The minuses on Santee obviously is coming into they're limited on their options of what you can choose for color. But they have several different cuts along the way that help a wide range of people. So, and then the cool thing that we do for Santee as far as Santee USA is if you decide you want it, you actually get a free P valve installed on the suit as well. So even on that, when you're using a dry suit, you're not having to get out of it to go run to the bathroom right away. You can actually have plumbing already built into it when you guys buy your dry suits, and we offer that as a free of charge process right out of the gate. That saves you almost 350 bucks that you'd have to pay from other manufacturers as well. Because again, we look at it as having a complete suit at the end of the day. So it's kind of hard to dive a dry suit without having some kind of plumbing in it. So it just doesn't make sense to us. So why would we pass it on? It doesn't make sense to clients and customers as well.
Yeah, they take this as far as suspenders are included, pockets are included. You get a hood as well. Like it's not just the parts that are sewn on, but you also get a hood. It's part of the package. So when you buy a Santee suit, you're really buying, like I can put it on here, size it to you, we'll cut the thing and then let's go diving. It's really ready to go when it comes. It's not like we got to add a whole bunch of stuff or do a whole bunch of stuff to it. So, you know, when you actually start looking at suit comparisons, I'm not going to say Santee's the cheapest, they're not, but they include a lot. You buy a bear suit, it doesn't include suspenders, it doesn't include this, it doesn't, oh, you're adding bits and pieces. Oh, well, a pocket, how much is that? Well, that's $200 for both sides. No, for one side. Oh, yeah, well, so there's $400, and then a hood, and then a suspenders, and then so you start adding it up, and they're not nearly as divergent as it might look if you just said, hey, on the website that says 3,200 and this says 4,200. By the time you start putting all the extras in, you're actually a whole lot closer. And that's something, if anybody's ever interested in, you know, seriously looking at different models of suits, I have a spreadsheet that I'm happy to go over with you that sort of looks at each of the manufacturers and how they approach this. Because as Ori said, none of the other manufacturers include a P-valve. So that's about a $320 upgrade if you're going to just put that in, whether it's a male or a female. The P-valve installed portion is the same. Just the personal attachment that is different. Yeah, the personal attachment's different, which is good. But
Never know these days.
yeah.
Easy now.
But that's a big savings when you're looking at something. The other thing, Ori, if you don't mind, I'm going to talk a little bit. I personally think that Santee's glove system is the best on the market that I've experienced so far. It's called Smart Seals. It's a proprietary thing. You cannot get them put on any other type of suit. I asked, didn't I? Yes, I did ask, you know, for a friend. But no, you cannot get them put on another suit. And I'm happy to sort of show you guys what that looks like afterwards. But it's a very simple system, easy to don and doff. I have used many, as you can imagine, different dry suit cuffs and gloves. It is the only one that I've actually never had leak in any way, shape, or form. Well, actually, not true. It was, I did get a leak once, but it was my own fault. I had the tag of my glove hanging out over the seal, and of course, over time, I got some wicking water, but that was user error, not system error. But as far as the system goes, it's very easy. The Smart Seal systems, I was just showing a gentleman that couldn't make the seminar just before you guys arrived. And he was amazed at how quickly I could change the seals. And he said, oh, but I probably couldn't do it. I said, here, try it. And I didn't even show him how to do it. You could figure it out. It's so easy. So if you rip the wrist seal, you can actually change it while it's even. I've done it with the suit on a person on a boat. Without getting out of the suit, I can change your wrist seals. Let's go. And it's like a 2-minute process to get somebody's new wrist seals on.
As long as you have an extra set.
Yes, if you have a spare set of wrist seals, which I do always happen to carry. But I find that is, again, another advantage. I would pay extra for that. You don't have to, but I would pay extra for it because with the number of times I've had a dry suit glove leak, you know, oftentimes they say, well, dry suits are dry. That's what, you know, DUI, everybody knows what that stands for. Dry unless immersed. Yeah, dry unless immersed. Once it's immersed, they leak, you know, but sometimes dry suit diving is like that. It's not necessarily always a dry suit. A little zipper, you know, a tooth on a zipper, a little piece of fabric that got stuck out over here, a tag on a wrist ring or something, even a neck seal that's maybe folded over when you didn't realize it, and you jump in and it goes, whoop, and you know, you get a little trickle down the back. It's not always bone dry, but I found that with the Santee glove system, it's impeccably like it works every single time, which is nice. And it's also, like I said, easy to self-don and doff with a few basic techniques, which I always go over with people here in the classroom. When you get your suit in, it's quite easy, and I get people to change their own wrist seals and say, here, look, I want you to be able to do it on the boat in 2 minutes, not Brad, I need your help. No, I want you to be able to do it on your own. And it is dead simple. So it's an important part of it. It is an important part because some of the other systems, the glove systems, are not that simple, and you would not be able to do that on the fly like you can with a Santee glove system. So that's another plus that's sort of a proprietary Santee thing, which I particularly love. I'm gonna just pass this around, Ori. I've got the swatch with the different materials, so you can. I'm just gonna pass that around so you can look at some of the different materials. Ori had referenced, hey, if you just want flexibility, you probably want an Emotion or an Emotion Plus suit. It's a very light fabric. I've got a suit hanging up over there, an Emotion Plus suit. It's the purple one. People can get up and move around and touch and feel it later. Or on the opposite side, you have the Elite, which is sort of the more durable of their four. And then you have, if you think of those as the two extremes, so Emotion here, Elite here, and they have an Emotion Plus, which is a hybrid, and a Elite Plus, which is also a hybrid. So heavy, light, and then two in betweens. Again, depending on where we fall in that, what's most important, flexibility or durability. The Elite Plus falls a little bit more to the durable side, slightly less flexible. Emotion Plus, a little bit more flexible. And again, when we're saying durable, this is not like, oh, they're going to fall apart on you, but you can tell by the material, oh yeah, that's never going to tear. We could take a knife to that thing and still not cut it. Whereas, you know,
no knives on dry suits. Come on now.
Oh, okay. All right. But keys, you're doing keys.
There you go. There you go.
Yes, Shereen.
Is there a trade-off in how warm they are? Flexible versus durable?
So within a tri-laminate space, I would say not a ton.
So you could go photography, still lifestyle.
Yes, but really it's a layering strategy for the thermals underneath that's more that becomes more important in tri-lam suits. So crushed neoprene suits do have a little bit more warmth, so maybe you don't need to wear quite as much thermals. But what I'll coach people on is, hey, if you're going to buy a tri-lam suit, think of it. You're wearing a heavy-duty contractor garbage bag. Okay, it's more elegant than that, obviously, but it's a thick garbage bag, is what it is. Nicely tailored, sewn, and fit, but that's what it is. So if you get in a garbage bag and you jump in cold water, you're going to feel cold. So the strategy then is, what is the appropriate layering for the environment that you're going to be going in? And that would be the same whether you're in an Emotion Plus or an Elite suit. So you're going to have some sort of dry base. Actually, probably one of the most important layers in your dry suit thermals is the first layer that's against your skin. The most important thing is to get the moisture off of your skin and move it away from your body, which is why you don't ever want to wear cotton or something like that. And I get a lot of people going, well, I got a quick dry shirt. That should do the trick, right? Well, quick dry requires an open environment like this for that moisture to go somewhere. Well, in a dry suit, you're zip locked into 100% humidity. A quick dry is useless in a dry suit, but you want something that's wicking. So you want something that's going to move the moisture quickly away from your skin. You'll see something like this Fourth Element, for example. It's got a waffle pattern in here, and you can come up and feel it. It's specifically designed as a technical garment to move quickly the moisture away from your skin. The evaporation of that moisture from your warm body skin will make you very cold in the dry suit, faster than the cold water will. You know, it's that kind of thing. It really has a big Anybody that's gotten wet while getting dressed in the hot sun in a dry suit knows, hey, if you start wet, you're not going to stay warm nearly as long because you've got so much moisture in there and you got to get rid of it quickly. So you're going to start with a base layer. And then you have so many options here. You know, Santee has a BZ200. Do we have one of those hanging here somewhere? Or 400 right here. This is a single piece suit. And we'll go over, you know, a bit more touchy-feely stuff on that. But they have suspenders. They're reinforced. They've got stretch here, mesh close to the arms, you know, mesh up by where your dump valve would be. So again, easy kind of stuff. Even little holes for the heating elements if you're going to get like a heated vest or things like that. Holes for your P-valve hoses to go through. So they're very, very well made. Again, with that finished product that you can basically put on and go and wear diving without having to do mods. And I got a buttonhole, some, you know, holes for my P-valve because a lot of the other manufacturers don't build that stuff into their thermals. Then you have a mid layer, like Fourth Element has a zero therm, which is a mid layer, sort of, Bear has their AUG, or Hollis has AUG, Bear has their own version. I'm going to say it's mid range. You might want to wear it in Brockville in July when the water temperature is 65, because wearing the super thick stuff, you're going to overheat. But just wearing the base layer wouldn't be enough. So a mid layer is good for those sort of 65, 70 degree water temperatures. When you get into the cold stuff, you want to put something like the Arctic or the BZ200 on, and that's going to be your woolly, your fleecy. Oh, this is going to keep me nice and toasty warm. There are also vests. So Fourth Element has like what they call X-Core as a vest. Santee also has a heated vest so that you can plug it in like this one here. You can plug it into a battery that goes through a little port here on your Drysuit inflator, and it'll keep you toasty warm. That's good for ice diving situations in places where you're getting prolonged exposure to the cold. Sometimes on an ice diving course, I'll be in the water for 2.5 to 3 hours in 32 degree water. I wouldn't make it if I didn't have some battery operated stuff. That would be way too long to have hands that still moved and you know, be able to breathe if my chest wasn't frozen. But with a vest and gloves on, I'm good for 2.5 to 3 hours in the water while I'm teaching an ice diving course, for example. So there are a whole bunch of different layering strategies that you can employ here. I've only covered probably half of the stuff that's available, but to answer the question, it's really like, where am I diving and what would be the appropriate set of layering? Always beginning with a good base layer and then layering up based on the environment that you're going to be in. So probably.
So would you have to size your dry suit based on the thickest layering that you're going to be using?
Yeah, so basically whenever we take your measurements, we're measuring your physical body. Okay, so we're taking an exact measurement of your chest or hips or whatever. And then when they construct the dry suits, they generally construct them with what's called an ease, an easement, if you will. And they assume the thickest of the undergarments, usually for that manufacturer. So Santee's is the BZ400, is their thickest undergarment. So they'll build it with that in mind. Now, it doesn't get sloppy. Like, I don't wear a BZ400, I wear a BZ200. And it still fits me. You look at me and go, oh, dude, that suit fits well, you know, svelte. Well, maybe not. That could be an exaggeration, but it fits you well, right? Like it looks like it was cut for me and tailored for me. It doesn't look like it's all sloppy and I'm strewn all over the place. If I wear it with just the base layer, you know, like, oh, it's Gulliver's and it's summertime, it starts to get a little bit loose, obviously. But, you know, as a dry suit diver, it's something that you can get used to and you just deal with it. But with any kind of thermals on, it'll usually fit nice and neat, but they're made to take the thickest so that if you do end up going that way, it's not too tight.
And
Santee does that a lot for the BZ400s because those guys are out in the Baltic Sea doing a lot of this as well, right? Being in Poland. But let's say that you were only going to ever dive a BZ200. They wouldn't necessarily recut the suit to fit that undersuit because the differences in the suit itself wouldn't make much sense to do the changes overall. But at the same time, if you ever wanted to move to a BZ 400 or put a vest underneath your 200, you wouldn't have the room in the suit to start layering more if it was cut down to the thinner undersuit, right? So you would actually limit yourself by getting one cut down than if you actually had it available to fit the thickest undersuit that they have out there, which a lot of manufacturers, it's a 400 gram. So if you go with an undersuit from a different manufacturer and a dry suit from a different manufacturer, ideally they should still work because the thickness of the suits will still work for the undergarments. The only one that plays a factor, and just being honest and open about all this stuff, right? Because it's all learning. That's actually what this whole thing is weasels. Weasel undersuits are tricky because they're so lofty. So with them being so lofty with the thin silhouette, those ones always feel tight in any of the manufacturer's suits, and it's just because they have a lot of loftiness to them. And we see the most struggles if you go with a weasel undersuit in any of the dry suit manufacturers, just because of that element. And none of the manufacturers are really going to build a specific suit to fit a weasel undersuit because it's not their brand for that particular undersuit. But just be aware that it's super warm. Don't get me wrong, but just because of how lofty the material is, it does cause a challenge here and there.
They're like this thick. They're like super puffy. It's like wearing a big fluffy down jacket. They're toasty warm, but really big and bulky.
So your 400 suit there,
Yeah.
does that have batteries in it or heated
This
also?
this one does not. Do you want to just talk quickly about the heated line, Ori? Because
Yeah.
Phil has asked about this 400. This one here is not a heated suit, but they do have one. So I'll get Ori to talk about it here for a quick second.
Yeah, so the heated components, so it's the same thing with what we look at for even heated side. So there's actually a heated vest and a heated undersuit, and there's two heated undersuits actually now with Santee because we convinced them about 4 years ago to come up with another model that really hit the market running. But the battery construction itself is not on the undersuit; it's actually external. So the battery pack is always on your waist or on your tank straps, wherever you're going to be putting it, because we wanted an external battery. That way, if for some reason the suit did flood, or if you had a wire that acted up on you, you could disengage the power right now. And you can do that externally. Anytime you run a battery inside the dry suit, you're underwater and you start having a burning effect, it's going to hurt by the time you get back to the surface because there's no way to stop it, right? So I always caution people on that. There's safety scenarios put in place for different manufacturers that have that. But at the same time, it's something we control on the external side very easily. So we have an external pack, a thermal valve that goes on the chest, already in the suit. And that allows electricity to get into the suit and then plug into whatever we have inside. So like the BZ 400 that's hanging there, there's a heated version of that same thickness that has wires running through it. So it's a heated 400. The next step down is going to be what's called a 180 or a 200 gram. It's actually called the Flex 2.0. So it's about half the thickness of a 400, still a full undersuit that's actually heated. And then they have the heated vest if you just wanted to go with the vest. So let's say that you were doing a 200 undersuit because it was cost effective for what you're doing right now to start off with, but you still wanted to do that ice diving course in the winter. You could get the heated vest put underneath the 200, and now it gives you about 400 grams just in the chest with a heated component. And then you could still do your cold water diving during the winter and then get rid of it, shut it off when it comes to summer months. You don't need it anymore. So it allows flexibility back and forth. The 400 heated, we see it often in Canada for sure for a lot of the cold stuff. But even when I travel, go to Alaska or Canada, like cold water diving, I generally don't go with the 400 unless I'm running some long dives and long deco. I'll do the Flex 2.0, which is half the thickness, as I mentioned, for the undersuit. And then I'll put a vest underneath it. And then I run the heated gloves that plug into the undersuit. So I got heat all around where I need it. And then I still have the flexibility of what the 200 actually has to offer. So I'm not constricted down to the 400. Because the 400 during the summer is a lot. You'll get warm in that suit quite often. And that's the only reason we don't do that, because you don't have flexibility to shed layers if you actually need to. So just things to think about, right? So there's lots of different options out there for stacking and doing what you need to do.
So
Thermal properties, go ahead.
I was gonna say, so do the heated undergarments there that connect to the outside one, is there a control for the temperature If you sense that you're getting too hot, you can turn it down. Or if you're getting too cold, you can turn it up. And how long do batteries last on the electrical stuff?
Always good question. So battery usage in life is always the question that we get asked about. As far as power controls, so Santee's philosophy, and they have a lot of good videos about this too, is it's not a heating element. So it's not like you're going to walk up and all of a sudden stand next to a fire and warm back up, right? So Santee's philosophy is a warming vest. They call it heating, but it's actually a warming vest or a warming undersuit. So what that means is you run the heat all through the dive and you keep maintaining the same body temperature. So let's say that you're doing a long dive and you all of a sudden start feeling a little chill. That would be the point that you would turn on the suit, or a little bit before that if you knew the timeline. So that way you didn't get any colder, but Santee is then going to regulate the body temperature in the suits to make it last that much longer versus you getting colder and colder and colder. So if all of a sudden you were freezing, you're at the point where you're extremely cold and you turned on the heat, you would feel warmer for sure, but it's not going to warm you all the way back up to where you were originally of the dive, because they want to keep the power going through the wires at a minimum and they don't want to overheat the suit too much. Otherwise, you're constantly turning it on and off, and that's not the philosophy they go for. They want you to be warm the whole time. Having said that, the undersuits for Santee, they draw 10 amps per hour. So if you go with, let's say, a 20 amp hour battery pack, you're going to get 2 hours out of that battery pack before you run out of juice and the undersuit shuts off. The vest draws 4 to 5 amps per hour, so you're going to get 4 hours out of that battery pack before it actually shuts off. But now if you combine, let's say, the gloves with the vest, you're going to be running, because the gloves are about 2 to 3 amps, so let's call it 3 and 5. You're drawing 8 amps right away, so that battery pack's going to last you a little over 2.5 hours. Or a little over 2 hours, rather, about 2.5. So this is where we start balancing out the size of battery pack you need for the duration of the dives that you're doing. So if you went with an undersuit, for instance, at 10 amps per hour, and you go buy a low-end battery pack that's only 5 amps, you're going to get a half-hour burn time out of there before the battery's toast or dead at that point. So it's not good for the longevity of the dive is the point of the story.
Is it a specific battery you have to buy for that suit?
It's not a specific battery. There are a number of different ones, and I can show you some of the different ones if you're interested later. I have a 30 amp hour battery that also has a dual output, so it's heats my thermals and it's also a canister light. So mine doubles.
These are
called a dual
waterproof
output. They are all waterproof, the Delrin type containers, O-rings, latches, like you'd find on big waterproof cameras, that kind of stuff. Santee has a couple. There's one right there. Or Halcyon has, that's a Halcyon one. There are some Santee ones. Light Monkey makes them, there are a number of different people that make them. Most of them use what's called an EO cord to plug into, so that the bulkhead that Ori was talking about to get the electricity in. Yeah, that's an EO connector. So it's got a pin on one side and a hole on the other, and the opposite one has that, and they basically plug together like this. And that's what Ori's saying. You can just pull that apart if you ever had an issue. Yeah, he's got it all shown there. You can just pull that apart underwater, and you now have no electricity going into your suit. So if you ever had an issue.
And the Santee suit is already pre-done with those cords on it, or is that
no? You can get there are two options. One's called a Drysuit connector, the other is called a thermal valve. Each of them is basically a bulkhead that has that wire on it, and that would be an additional. Again, it's like I say, it's expensive. It's for a thermal valve, we call it $500 kind of thing for the bulkhead with the built-in inflator. It goes right here. So you wouldn't want to put it on everybody's suit, because if people weren't going to use it, don't have batteries or don't need it, then it would add a lot of expense. So it's an upgrade that you can do afterwards if you want to get into heating elements, but
the plugs get very specific to Santee undersuits, right? So other manufacturers on heated elements may run separate plugs or different style of plugs to plug in together. So the EO cords is pretty standard, as Brad was just mentioning. So just about everybody has those. But the internal plugs are proprietary to each undersuit that's out there. So this is why we don't include it, because you may go with a Santee Drysuit, but you may go with a Light Monkey undersuit or a DUI undersuit that has a different connection when it comes down to it. So that's very specific to the individual. So we allow you to have those options and choose what you want. So when you're looking at regulating, so I'll put this out there, and Brad knows this as well. But so let's say you go with a Light Monkey battery pack, which there's nothing wrong with it. We have a lot of people that do it, and for longevity and time, it's actually a good pack to go with. But they have what's called a Pitkin controller, so it actually controls the power to the undersuits. What we have found for years and years and years is that Pitkin controller does not play well with Santee undersuits. So we don't encourage you guys to run with one because it restricts the power going through the wires or increases that amperage going through the wires. And those wires are built to handle a certain power going through them. So if we start increasing that and we run a lot more amps through those wires to try to heat up more or restrict it, then the connector actually plays a factor to where it's actually causing a lot of heat spots in those wirings, and those heat spots start damaging it. So if you run the battery pack directly in for a Light Monkey, we don't see any problems. But if you run a connector in between, we usually see issues with it. So we don't encourage you guys to mix and match when it comes to that connector. The new one they say is better. They've solved the issue, but we haven't seen tests on it to see if it actually did or not.
I'll tell you after our ice diving weekend.
Yeah, there you go.
Because I got one.
But it's just some more of that knowledge that's out there, right, that we've seen. So I mean, it's not to put bad on Light Monkey. They make a great product, don't get me wrong. But for some reason, and Light Monkey hasn't figured it out, and we haven't figured it out, they just don't work well together when it comes to just that controller. But the battery packs themselves, we get people that use them all the time. So no issues at all.
Miro, question.
Yeah, just a quick one. So I understand the connector is friction, simple, like friction pressure. There's no lock
Nope.
mechanism. So in the case of breach or disconnect, there's like electronic component on the battery, so it shuts this off, doesn't just complete the circuit.
No, there's nothing there. It's just like it's broken, and because it's not connected, you know, like with the, like this.
Okay.
It just, you can unplug it and you could probably lick it and it probably wouldn't do anything.
So there's
I'm
generally
not encouraged that, by the way, that was not a suggestion, just so you know. I'm not suggesting you're licking. I feel a lawsuit coming. Yeah.
No, I jotted it down so that way I know where it goes back to. So the battery canister itself has a switch on it as well. So when we talk about being able to disengage it real quick, if you're in a panic, you grab at the chest and disconnect the power. Problem solved, but then you can still go down and actually switch off the battery if you want to.
It's just the friction.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, it's just
Yep.
speed needs. Even if you had almost no, dexterity or.
Locking.
Yeah,
Very quick,
I could
just
show you
pulls
the
apart,
downstairs.
there's no twisting.
Yeah, it's literally just like that.
And it's a wet connection, so you can do that underwater without damaging anything. But obviously in salt water, if you don't disengage the battery first, there is electricity coming from here. So you will get electrolysis that happens. And it's actually one of the damaging things for EO cords that everybody suffers with, is they'll get in the habit of just disconnecting this. Even with the battery still on, and we encourage, and as part of the training in the Drysuit class, we encourage that you shut the battery off before you unplug it, because it prevents that oxidation or that electrolysis from happening on the connections, and it's extremely hard to clean. And over time, if it corrodes too much, then you got to change the cable, and that's a cost to you guys for maintenance, right? So same thing with battery terminals on a truck. If you don't clean them every now and then, or if they don't make good contact, they'll get that electrolysis that happens, and eventually it causes damage to the terminals. So this is no different. So in an emergency, for sure, you could disconnect it, get rid of it, but then make sure that you're shutting off the canister at all possible points to make sure that you kill power to that end connection. If you can kill the power first, always good, and then disconnect the cable afterwards if you're unsure. But we always try to kill power before anything else.
Can you put it back?
Yes, you can put it back together as well underwater. Yeah, if it catches, and for example, I would say turn it off first, plug it together, and then fire it back on. But yes, I've had that happen in a couple instances swimming through a wreck, for example, and I look down and my cord is dangling. I didn't realize. Yes, I can reach over and plug it back in underwater, but I would turn off the power first, just so I'm not putting it together while it's charged. Right. But yes, you can put it together underwater. I think Or some of the guys used to do that in the caves where they'd have 2 or 3 canisters for heating and they, oh yeah, I finished with this one, it's done, or the light is done, and pop it into a new one underwater without having to take the light head off your hand, boom, or whatever. So yeah, you could use multiple canisters and plug them in at different points in the dive.
And as you get further along too, so like on the exploration side that we do for caves and even the cold water is, if we have a DPV or a scooter we're running, we'll actually add an EO cord to that battery pack as well on the DPV. Because when we're not using the DPV doing our deco, for instance, we're going to plug our heat into that. And then we have a long range battery, right? That'll last us for hours and hours and hours in the water. And I can just keep the one on my hip perfectly contained for the light if I need to. So I would switch to a DPV battery plug-in very quickly when we're doing our long range deco. And for the heating portion, just to come back to that a little bit, is generally throughout the whole dive, you're usually moving, kicking, doing a bunch of tasks. You're not really thinking about the cold factor as well, right? Because your body's moving. It's not until towards the end of the dive where you stop, you relax, and then you start doing your safety stops or your ascent profile. So generally at that stage, for a lot of us, we won't have the heat running the entire time for the duration of the dive. It won't be until like 5 minutes before we know we're going to slow down. Because once we slow down, we'll start working body heat, right, naturally. So when we slow down 5 minutes before, then we'll kick on the heating element because then the rest of the dive is super comfortable. So let's say we only had 30 minutes of deco to do. So I'm only using 30 minutes of that battery pack at that point versus an hour and a half where I really didn't need it throughout the whole duration of the dive. So you start planning out the battery usage of where you actually need it through the whole process. So just things to think about as you continue to go.
Brad,
Yeah, the question was, do they come cut for women? And the answer is yes.
Yes.
There is a ladies line and then a men's line. There are how many sizes? 11 or 12?
So 12 for the ladies line and then 16 for the men's sizes when we're talking about stock sizes. So they have 16 stock sizes and 12 for ladies. And even with that, so this is another advantage of Santee that we can go into real quick is with the dry suits and the stock sizing, Santee allows you to do 4 custom measurements on a stock size suit. So whether it be arms, chest, legs, whatever the case, you're allowed 4 free measurement changes up to 5 centimeters or 2.5 inches rather, which is a lot when you're looking at different measurements. So you get 4 free ones. So basically you can end up with a semi-custom suit without paying any additional fee for. And then we introduced a couple years ago, actually last year, we introduced a 5th and 6th mod that you can do. So now you can do 6 changes on the dry suit or undersuit. And you're paying only on the US side $150 for 5 and 6 if you need to do that many of them. So you're paying $150 more to do up to 6 changes. So did not find a stock size suit for somebody and being able to do modifications along the way is super rare. So a lot of other manufacturers, if they don't fit a stock size, they instantly go into a made to measure or custom made suit. And on the Santee side, we don't have to right away. We can do stock sizes and adjustments that don't hurt the pocketbook at all. So it's a neat little benefit when it comes to Santee.
But if your body type requires a made to measure suit, you can have a suit that's completely custom tailored to you. We've had several here where whether it's the big and tall or the short and wide version, either one of those, we've had several people that just don't. Hey, we could try all the custom measurements we want. We just couldn't get it small enough or big enough, as the case may have been. And what Ori and I have done over the course of a couple years and trials and finding out the best way to do this, depending on the severity of those, we've actually had Santee sew the shell suit together, but no taping, no nothing. Send us the suit. Have the user try it on so it doesn't have seals and neck seals and all that stuff. Have the user try it on. Let's make sure all the proportions are right. Send it back. And then they finish the suit with the boots and all the other finishing touches. And we've had really good luck doing it that way. For somebody that's not a standard size, that's a great way to build the suit because you know halfway through when they can easily change it still because it's just, hey, let's undo the sewing and tighten it up or whatever. easy to change it there. Once you start gluing and taping and all that stuff, it's very hard to, it's a lot trickier to change.
So is there a way to change though, like say, 2 years from now?
My ass is much bigger than it was this year. Yeah, thank you very much. Yes. No, she was talking about my ass. I was very specific. I didn't say your ass. I said my ass. Otherwise, it would have been insulting. So what I would say is, it's always, there's always possibilities to do that, but it's tricky because it may depend on how much fabric is already there. So if you're going, taking it in is probably easier than letting it out, but it also depends on where it is. So I'm gonna say it would be a discussion that we could have. That said, you can probably lose or gain about 20 to 30 pounds in a range and still be in that dry suit without changing it at all. So whether it's getting a little smaller here or getting a little bigger here, you can probably do that within a 20 to 30 pound range without having to worry about, I've got to get a new suit.
But it's your neck seal.
So the neck seal may need to be changed, but that's an easy thing for us to change. We do that here at the shop. So, you know, let's say I was a 17 neck, we've cut the neck seal that size, I've lost 30 pounds, now I'm a 16 neck. Yeah, we'll probably have to put a new latex seal on, but that's, you know, $169, including parts and labor and glue and all that stuff. That's a whole lot cheaper. It's going to cost you that much to ship a dry suit somewhere to get something changed. You know, they're not, because they're heavy, they're not bulky, they're not.
For general maintenance.
Yeah, so patching holes, changing seals, you know, that kind of stuff. We do all that stuff here because we want to turn things around quickly. When it would get to say more complicated or time investment things like zippers or whatever, we'll either contract somebody else locally or we'll send it back to Santee. In this, you know, in the case here, we'll send it back to them and they can do it there.
Now, when he says Santee, he means Florida because we do all the major repairs here in Florida. So everything we do minus getting into the circumference dimensions of the suit, which is either thinning it out, making it more narrow, or elongating some of the parts and pieces as well. So, but all the major repairs we do physically here in Florida, so it doesn't have to go all the way out to Poland.
So
Cuff
apart from the
rings.
seals, what's the most common that those are fail point times? Yeah.
It's really just seals, or if you're rough on them, you can puncture a suit. I've done it. You know, anybody that's done enough dry suit dives has probably caught their suit on a piece of metal on a wreck or whatever. It's going to happen. But generally, it's neck seals and wrist seals are really the two things. Zippers can be. I will spend 10 or 15 minutes with you talking about how to take care of your zipper, because it's probably the most expensive part on the suit to replace. So you really don't want to do it. I mean, I've had suits that the zippers lasted 8 years. You know, I got no problems with it. Never leaked once.
And they're plastic?
They have both. You can get a metal zip if you wish. You can get one of the old standard BDM zipper. You can get that put on. That's actually an upgrade too, isn't it, Ori?
Nope. I was about to say you don't have to pay extra for that either. You can choose metal or plastic.
Some of the manufacturers charge more.
And the seals are latex and silicone?
So you
can choose either one, but if you go with silicone, you have to have a ring system because they don't get glued onto the suit. It doesn't work.
The other thing is with Santee, you get to pick. Oh, I want to have a name embroidered on my pocket. You know, it's a nice little. I mean, it is a nice little thing. You know, you always know. Hey, you get 7 of those hanging on a dive boat. I want to know which one's mine. You know, because they all look long and tall and svelte.
I like never put on somebody else's.
And then color options the same way. So you can choose whatever color options you want within what's available on the Santee website. So if you guys go on there and play around with colors, whatever's available for those color options is what you can choose, and there's no additional fee for colors either. But what's happening with dry suits, and it's happening more and more, if you go with just a basic black model suit, for surely you can get that probably a lot quicker than what you can if you go and choose colors or choose certain options. because what's happening is Santee is having to build every single one of these, and all the manufacturers do. They're all having to build these suits individually based off all the options that are available anymore, especially when it comes to colors. For us to stock, even as a distributor, all the suits and all the possible color options is nearly impossible. So even though we don't have a lot of stock sizes sitting in the warehouse, for instance, but the point is you can start choosing all these different colors and sizes, and surely get a suit that's your liking and that you're going to be happy with for the investment. So this is what will take a little bit of time for sure. And Santee gets faster and faster with it, and other manufacturers do as well. But this is where people start looking at lead times of suits. So even if you guys start looking at now buying a suit, you'll get it in time for fall diving for sure. Likely a lot sooner than that, but you would definitely have it before October hit if you guys decide to place the order in the next month. So you think ahead when you're looking at this. If you're getting into September and you want a suit for October, I can promise you just about nobody will have a stock size suit sitting in a shop anywhere that's ready to go, unless it's a lower end suit like, and no offense, but like Bear or even Avatar, which is another brand that we have. But you're limited on your options at that point. It's truly stock size, it's only one color, and you get what comes on the suit, but you get a suit within a couple weeks versus a couple months is the name of the game. So I'd encourage you guys to plan ahead if you're truly looking at trying to get a suit for the fall when it starts getting colder for sure.
What about warranty?
Certain warranty, for your, I can talk to some of the others after, but what for you is,
Oh, there's no warranty whatsoever. No, I'm joking. So the warranty on the dry suits for the material itself is 5 years. And what that covers is starts going into delams, or if the suit starts breaking down and starting to peel apart basically for the laminate materials that happens on the suits. So in my history with Santee so far for the past 9 years, we've only seen 2 suits ever delam. And so what happens is that goes back to Santee and they rebuild that portion of the suit that is delaminated. So for sure, it's not an exciting adventure. And if it happens to you, I'm sorry. But it's very rare when it ever does take place. But they do a 5-year warranty on the material of the suit itself. Zippers, for instance, for Santee, we offer a 2-year warranty on zippers. So the plastic zippers and the metal zippers get a 2-year warranty on them. Now, this plays a little different game when it comes to what's considered a warranty on a zipper. If you're an active commercial diver, an instructor, for instance, you may zip that zipper up and down 800 times a year if you're knocking out 400 dives in a year. So that means that zipper is wearing itself out each and every time, right? When we look at the average diver, we're looking at about 100 dives a year, so 200 zips on the zipper, and that gives you 2 years, right? So you're looking at 400 zips. But if you do that 400 zips in a single year, obviously the zipper is just wearing out at the end of the day. So we look at how long the zipper has been used and the duration it's been used as well. For me, I'm actively diving. I do close to about 400 to 450 dives a year. So that's 900 zips in a single year. So my zipper gets changed out probably every 8 to 10 months, depending on if I'm using that same suit for the whole duration. But it's just because it's worn out at that point.
And do you have to send, sorry, do you have to send a suit all the way to Poland or
No.
it's here?
Yep, can be done in the States, whether it stays in Canada or it can come down to Florida. Either option is perfectly fine. We have service centers all through Canada. Brad is going to be possibly doing more and more of this as he gets more involved with them as well. But if not, it comes down to Florida and we can do it in Florida very easily. So we try to keep it north of the border if we can to make it easier, but sometimes it's super easy just to get down to Florida. We knock it out and send it back up to you. So very easy to reinstall.
if you baby your zipper, like I told you, my first one lasted 8 years. I didn't have to replace it. If you baby it, and I probably did well over 1,000 dives on that zipper, easy, probably about 200 cold water dives a year. Some of those in ice diving and all that stuff where, you're really pushing it to an extreme. I got well over 1,000, still no issues,
So cold water, you guys would suggest metal, the classic, or the plastic? Or there's no difference?
Both of them work. I have found it's more of personal preference. Some of the old school guys love the metal. Well, you'll get a lot of tech guys that'll say metal, but you know, I've asked Ori this question, they'll say, well, I got plastic on mine and it works great. So, you know, I've had plastic on my Santee suit, yeah, same thing, no issues. So it is a bit of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. The plastic ones, you can pretty much scrunch them up, you know, and pull them apart. Nothing happens to them. If you did that with a metal zipper, it could be busted, you know. So from that standpoint, the plastic has a functional advantage. But some of the guys just like the ruggedness of that metal zipper. It's an older school zipper. I think pretty much every manufacturer now that I'm aware of, their primary is the plastic zipper. It's metal on the outside though. It's more the teeth, the way the teeth come together on the outside, so it doesn't affect your body temperature at all.
What
And
about seams and seals?
Seams and seals, not so much. Again, most like wrist seals, we replace them like it takes 2 minutes. You can do it on your own. So it's $35. Buy a spare set, take them with you. I would say it's like a neck seal would probably, because they're
No,
wearing.
I'm saying like the seams in the suit itself. Like
Oh yeah, things like seams, Ori, on terms of a suit, like where it's sewn together.
Yeah, so we judge it by per case, right? But I mean, at the end of the day, we stand behind the product. So most cases, we don't even resort to asking Santee about it. We just take care of it because we know it's an investment on the suit. So if the seams are breaking down or if you're getting a lot of leaks along the seams, we usually just repair them and call it a day. But if there's a hole or a puncture, then obviously that's a little different program, right? Because then it's caused by something when it's in just a random spot on the suit. But yeah, any of the craftsmanship, we don't go in processes of nickeling and diming with that stuff. We generally just fix them and take care of them along the way. So super easy to do. And Brad would do that stuff up there as well if it's just a portion of the seam, which is usually the case. If all the seams in the suit started leaking all of a sudden, whew, that's going to go back to Santee because they're going to fix it. And so you may be out of the suit for a little while. And even in my 9 years, right? So I probably have maybe 5 cases of that. But it really came down to the glue at the time they were using. It just didn't set as well as it should have, and it broke down faster than it should have. But very rare. And again, they stand behind it as well. So they reseamed the entire suit, made it completely solid, checked it 3 times, and then sent it back to us very easily. We could do that in Florida, but we want to make sure that they're aware that there could be an issue with the range. So we make sure that they see that and it gets back to them. But simple seams, like if there's just a little leak here and there, then we fix those and take care of it under the warranty side. Because we're all divers, right? We all actively use this stuff. So we're not in the process of wanting to constantly, you know, battle pricing and different things back and forth. This is why we want to put together a suit that, you know, is completely finished and ready to go when it shows up to you guys. And there's not a lot of upgrades or choices, just because we know what everybody kind of needs at the end of the day when it comes to a dry suit being completely done. So same thing with the repair stuff.
So just to recap, so basically it's a 5-year warranty on the suit.
Yep.
The zippers and seams and things like that. Well, the seams, the seams fall under that 5-year warranty?
They do, yeah, because it's part of the same process,
So
right?
it's just the zippers that have a zipper warranty.
Yeah, and then the seals. So the seals are a little different because they're latex and silicone. So obviously you can tear a seal or rip a seal, or if you don't take care of it, obviously you can get holes in it very easily. If you have cats, I'm sorry, but there'll be claw marks in it eventually. So we'll see that pattern whenever it comes to cats clawing into the seals. But at the end of the day, when it comes to wrist seals, what we have seen is there's a lot of things that impact those. So Santee generally does, and what we do is generally a 6 months on wrist seals and neck seals as far as them longevity of it. But there's a couple of things that happen that we discuss as well. And one of them is, in this, you know, guys and girls this day and age, if you're wearing any kind of chemicals, products in the hair, makeup, or anything of the sort, those chemicals can react to the latex. So if you're not, you know, rinsing the hair out, wiping off all the makeup before you get into the neck seal or anything else of the sort, you could actually have those chemicals get onto the latex or the silicone and it eats it away. It just breaks it down a little bit faster. So let's say that we change it out the first time. Yeah, we see this dissolving. It only happened within a month of diving. We'll assume it's the neck seal, but if this is something that continuously happens with your particular suit, chances are it's a chemical of some sort that's getting onto the suit. So we'll have that conversation after the first go around and then decide what that is. Bug spray, sunblock, any of that stuff, if you're sitting out in the open and you have your suit on and those chemicals get on the neck seals or wrist seals, same thing can happen, right? They'll start breaking down those particular components.
Keep them away from electric motors.
Yeah.
Ozone will break down really fast. Like you'll pull it out and be like gooey. So
And on that, yeah, and on that same breath, P valves are actually the same way, to believe it or not. So there's silicone parts inside the P valve itself for the flapper and the duckbill. And we have some clients that actually go through P valve service kits every couple of months, and they're actively diving their suits. And talking with them, because we had open conversations as well, it actually came down to the consistency and the chemical makeup of the urine. So if they're on, a lot of medications, or if you're on a lot of fitness pills or different things along the way, that will play a factor and a toll on silicone parts, because if it sits in the P valve for long periods of time, it can actually cause those materials to break down quicker and quicker and quicker. And then you start getting leaks that come into the P valve. So just things to think about, right? So we have these conversations openly all the time, and we try to find a solution. And it may be that for you as an individual, you're just having to really rinse or do a detailed cleaning on latex, on wrist seals, neck seals, or a good flushing routine on P valves after every single dive. And you may actually do a service kit every couple of months on the P valves just because of that alone. And so we've had these conversations to figure out what these problems actually end up being. Sometimes faulty product, don't get me wrong, but sometimes it's really a chemical makeup when it's all said and done, because they only hold up for so long. So just things to think about.
All right. Any more questions for Corey?
So when you
Tom?
dive in Alaska, you said, right? Did you use 400 or 200 in underlay?
400 or 200?
When I was in Alaska?
Yeah, in Alaska.
Yeah, so the temperature of the water out there that we were diving in ranged from 36 to 42 on any given day where we were at. So for the most part, we started off, I took out both sets, to be honest, the BZ 400 heated and then the Flex 2.0 heated with the heated vest. We started off with the 400 just because the deco we were doing was pretty long. And because of how active we were with the current and everything else, even on deco, we were constantly moving. So constantly kicking to stay with the line, which means, not a fast pace, but a consistent one. And we ended up getting warm in the BZ 400. So for me, very rare. I'm usually cold all the time. But I actually switched over and started doing the 2.0 with the heated vest. And then I had the heated gloves. So I was fully heated from torso to the hands. But I used that probably for about 4 straight days and was perfectly comfortable. The thing to think about on those long duration dives, though, is if your suit were to spring a leak and you started getting that 36-degree water inside the suit, does that particular combination of undersuit have the thermal retention to keep you warm for the rest of your deco? Obviously, the 400 would have a lot more capabilities there, and you'd be a lot warmer. The 2.0 being a thinner undersuit may not have had as much thermodynamics to it, but at the same time, we knew it was going to be enough for those particular dives for the length of deco that we did. So we restricted our deco for that part of the equation to make sure that we were covered in case a suit were to tear or leak. So we actually restricted our deco down on some of the dives. But it all depends. If we were doing extremely long deco dives and I jumped to the 400 just for that purpose, if I was doing shorter deco dives, then I was in the 2.0. But both of them worked quite well up there. I was satisfied with both of them. But I run a pretty strong base layer as well. So whether it's the Fourth Element, or there's other companies out there that do the same thing for hiking and avalanche or mountain climbing and let's see, so snow. What do they call it? Going up to the mountains with the snow. I have to think about that one. But anyway, so hiking up into those elements where they're going to the top of different mountaintops. So when we look at those, they actually design a lot of base layers for those particular guys doing those expeditions, and we've tested and run those the same way. Another cool company besides the one that Brad's used is called Minus 33. So it's another one that's out there. Super warm and super flexible for sure, but a strong base layer is where it's going to be at all day long. And Fourth Element works quite well for that. Santee doesn't have a base layer. We used to, but there's so many competitors on the market for it. It just didn't make sense to carry it. But they're actually talking about bringing it back because it does complete the whole puzzle when it comes to the brand for Santee and dry suits and undersuits. So they're in the process of testing ones and figuring out which one they want to bring out for sizing. And maybe soon we'll have another line of base layers from Santee itself. But currently we don't. There's just too many good competitors on the market to make it worthwhile.
Is anyone making like bra base layers?
The question was, is anybody making broad base layers? Actually, Fourth Element does have that and underpants.
Okay.
Because they got to the point where they said, hey, we're telling people to do this, but
Yeah.
wear your cotton panties and your bra,
Yeah.
which made no sense. So yeah, they do actually have some
And Santee has and Santee has a sports bra as well for the same principle for the ladies first. We honestly didn't sell a ton of them in North America when it launched quite a few years ago, so we don't have any stock and supply of those, but they are available. And then I think they only have 4 sizes though, so it's very, very specific to the sizing. And this is what we ran into is generally they didn't work for a lot of people. So it's an option that's there, but there's manufacturers that do for sure.
Yeah, cool. All right, any other questions for Ori? We can, once Ori's off, we can ask any other questions. We'll go look at anything in the shop if anybody wants to see something or grab my suit or whatever. But other than that, anything else for Ori while we've got him?
And if anything comes up too, just let Brad know. He can email me. He can probably answer the question as well. But if anything comes up, just shoot us an email. We're happy to answer or even come back on at a later date and discuss things as well in person if you guys want. But appreciate you guys having me. It was enjoyable to be around with you guys. And I know it's going to be more show and tell now. So you guys enjoy that. And it'll be cool to see you guys get into some suits, regardless of the manufacturer. Dry suit diving is an adventure. So it's the next mark on your guys' career, which is super exciting for anybody. And
Cool.
like I said, when I got into it, I never went backwards. So dry suit forward was always the name of the game. So you guys won't regret it over time.
Cool. Well, thanks again for joining us. Give them a round of applause. Really appreciate it. And we'll talk to you soon, bud.
All right, see you guys.
All right, cheers.
You're so